Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. And yes, we are here with a bit of an interesting review for you. We have been very lucky. We've got a lot of opportunities. We always like to talk about them. We're not gloating. We just are happy that people are responding. And so far, we've made some pretty fun partners with people like Sony Pictures, who sent us Butcher's Crossing, which I covered a few months ago on the channel, and Universal Home Entertainment, who has sent us some titles. And one of those titles is Lisa Frankenstein, which, as some of you who might be sticking around might have realized, we never reviewed that movie. What happened? What was going on? Well, two things. One, we were very busy at the time. It was, I believe, September, October when that first came out. I thought, oh no, that was the beginning of the year.
Yeah, those were around February. I think this
February.
was more so a Valentine's Day movie.
That's right, Valentine's Day. So it was a lot more personal life stuff. But we were busy, and let's not forget here, we live in Akron, Ohio. So there's only so many films that will come to us, and this was unfortunately one of the ones that was odd because I think it had a pretty wide release, but I feel like only a few theaters in our area got it. So it just became a bit too much of a struggle for us to try to fit in. And when the opportunity came to talk about the Blu-ray, we said, hey, let's take a look at Lisa Frankenstein. So Luke, tell me, going into Lisa Frankenstein, how are you feeling? What are your thoughts after seeing the film?
Seeing the initial trailer for this one, when it did pop up, I was excited for this one because it seems like it's a little cheeky, it's fun. It has that personality to it. So, this was kind of one of those films where I went in expecting just a buttload of fun, where I'm not going to take it too seriously. It's not going to be something I'm looking to take a lot out of. I just feel like it was going to be a really digestible, fun type of film. And going into this one, checking it out for the first time, I got to say I did have some fun with it. I saw some aspects that I was like, maybe we could have tweaked this a little bit and had even more fun. But overall, I got to be honest, I really did enjoy my time with Lisa Frankenstein.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I thought that this was a buttload of fun. I think that there is a lot of really fun, unique aesthetical choices to this. It's written by Diablo Cody, who, obviously one of the films that I always champion with her, and I think many do, is Jennifer's Body. That is a film I can't wait to talk about one day because I have such a weird first time experience with that one. But yeah, I think she's just a really strong writer, and the fact that she's kind of coming back into horror and kind of giving us something that is pretty much her focus, because I think a lot of what she's been doing recently is series work and a lot of coming in and almost script doctoring a lot of things from looking at her IMDb here. So to see her kind of come back and be able to really just put her name back onto a property, and you really feel it. You feel the uniqueness of Diablo Cody's voice in this, but that's not the only thing that this film was kind of on everybody's radar for. No, this is directed by Zelda Williams, Robin Williams' daughter. So that was super duper interesting. And I gotta say, yeah, this was a fun film. This is very much in line with the kind of niche, dark, kind of coming of age comedy that I feel like a lot of people in their mid to early 20s just absolutely salivate for nowadays.
This has a fun kind of twisted, almost John Hughes feeling to it, I think. I think it goes back to that 80s feel to it. That is the time period we're dealing with here. I think it might be 1989, I believe. So we're dealing with the late 80s here. It's got that wonderful aesthetic to it. Lisa Frankenstein, kind of a play on that Lisa Frank, if anyone really remembers that stuff. It was a big thing when I was growing up. So I really love the aesthetic here and just the time period. I know, sitting here in 2024, a lot of the 80s time period stuff is a little played out after Stranger Things, and a lot of other films jumped on that kind of bandwagon. But I got to say, I think it really did well for Lisa Frankenstein, because you kind of get lost in that period. And then in the story that they're telling, like I said, it's kind of that twisted John Hughes story. I think it really works well. It really meshes well to the cast that they have. Catherine Newton in this. A lot of people are gonna know her from a lot of horror properties. Cole Sprouse, and it's just kind of that cheeky fun. It's that I got Breakfast Club feels. I think a lot of people are probably gonna mention Heathers if you've seen that one. It just has those kind of style, that feeling there. And it's something where I think Diablo Cody mentions, and I know we're kind of getting into special features. She mentions initially this kind of came out to be more so a horror film in her
Mhm.
in that initial idea. It's mentioned in one of the kind of extras that they have. And as she was kind of looking at this and realizing there is a lot of fun here. There's a particular bit with our one of our character that's played by Cole Sprouse, the tears, and
Mhm.
it's really handled well. And there's a lot of inside fun jokes in here. It's just it's such a digestible film. It's something you can turn on. It's a breeze to get through, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not something that I think is really, and I might get some hate because I know there's some big defenders for this. It's not breaking any major barriers for me, at least, as far as like being the most original or the most, insane film out there. But again, it's not really my taste when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like, I totally see what you're saying with the John Hughes nature. I get that. I like a lot of John Hughes movies, but I think that it did make me more curious, especially watching some of these special features we'll talk about, as to what Diablo Cody's original version to this was going to be, because of just like the concept here is a pretty dark, but I know that's kind of like what it's going for, in the sense of it being kind of dark with some glitter thrown on it, I guess is the best way to say it. It has that fun nature kind of twisted into it. But when you really sit there and think about it, it is a little twisted. There's definitely a lot of the, undertones of just like, kind of not really wanting to, be a part of this world, kind of stuff like that. Dancing around it for YouTube censor policies. But it's got a lot of different tones to it, and I found it to be very fun. Again, I think that Luke, you said it best off air here when you said this is definitely something that you could throw on around Halloween. It has those kind of feels. I will say, I think it's probably just because they look so similar, but like Cole Sprouse is definitely giving me Johnny Depp, Edward Scissorhand vibes in this. I think a lot of his performance is very body language focused for a good majority of the film, and I think that like yeah, he's definitely a talent, and of seeing remembering them from Zach and Cody and Big Daddy and stuff like that. It's so interesting to see where his career has gone. And I got to say, I think that he's kind of found his niche with these kind of off the beaten path, kind of interesting, weird projects. And I really liked his performance in this.
Yeah, so did I. I was surprised by, I guess, lack of dialogue. Like you said, the majority of his performance is nonverbal. But I think it worked really well. The dynamic works there, and I can see what you're saying with Edward Scissorhands. That relationship there is really
Oh yeah.
similar to Edward Scissorhands. And only I had a lot of fun here. Only mild critiques in terms of like I feel like it took the wheels come off at a certain point in here. And I really
Hmm.
wish it would happen a little bit earlier, just because I would have loved to live in that space a little bit longer. Because when the wheels do come off, it's just so much fun. And I would have loved to have them trying to doctor up all these problems that have been caused, earlier on. Is really my only critique here because, I think it was handled so well in terms of being able to keep the story moving. And, I think we're always wonder what this looked like if you lean a little more into horror. But, I think, what they did give us here is something where this could be deemed almost gateway horror, I think, for
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of
Oh
people,
yeah.
where it's like kind of getting your feet wet and mixing that comedy with the horror, I think is really done well. Again, I always have my critiques when it comes to that stuff, but I think it really does work here. There when they lean in the comedy bits, they absolutely lean into them, and then there is some horror in here. It's not an overabundance of horror at all, so it's not going to be jarring to anyone in that. But I think that's always gonna be our critique when you're watching something like When Evil Lurks, and then you're jumping into Lisa Frankenstein. It's gonna be two different tones there, but I think there's easily a place for a PG-13 Lisa Frankenstein. Of course, we would have loved to have seen what that hard R is gonna look like,
Oh
because
yeah.
you could see that version fairly easily. They would have leaned into some elements a little bit harder into this one, but I absolutely love the PG-13 version here. This is something that I will easily be turning on during Halloween, just to kind of maybe even start the day, because it is that kind of fun, gets you in the mood. I think it gets you while this isn't straight horror, it gets you in the mood to watch a lot of horror films.
I agree. Yeah, it definitely pays a lot of homage to, especially a more unique style of film and filmmaking. It's going to a lot of classic cinema. We talk about John Hughes tones and a lot of the '80s feel to this, but there's a lot of references to even like 1920s properties and projects. Some of the character names are references to things like that. I know one of them was the officers in the film. I think one is wasn't it Officer Johns and Officer Waters? So it's
Yes.
John Waters.
Yeah.
Lots of fun there. So like, there's little
I hit
references like that.
Sorry, I just mentioned it because you just mentioned John Waters. Serial Mom was something else that popped into my head
Yeah.
with this one, where it was like, this has very similar tones,
Mhm.
of that kind of mixing of the comedy and the horror. Sorry to cut you off, but
Oh,
that's
you're fine. It's all good. It's and yeah, I gotta say, as far as practical effects go in this, there's not a lot. It's not like something like we've seen recently with something like a Sting, where it's like there's anything really to stand out. I think the makeup is really well done, especially when like Cole Sprouse's character comes back into the house for the first time and he's all wet and droopy and covered in dirt. I really thought that was really well done. And again, it's just an interesting take on kind of a pseudo remake of the original Frankenstein tale. It takes just the elements of that and gives it a fresh new coat of paint. And I really found myself enjoying it. I think overall, as far as the film goes, I would probably land at giving this a high worth a watch. I think that this is definitely something that I'm going to recommend to people. But for me, this really isn't my kind of movie. So at the end of the day, I think I'm going to hold back on my high tier recommend or anything. This is just worth a watch for me.
Yeah, and for me, I think I'll probably go a little. I'll go recommend, but a little on the lower side, just because I think there was a lot of fun here. I did see those elements of we could have had a lot more fun. But for me, I know I'm gonna watch this regularly in terms of at least once a year. This is something that will work into my Late Night with the Devils probably going to be my centerpiece in terms of working into my Halloween rotation, whereas Lisa Frankenstein can be something I can throw on to start the day. Or if it's a trick or treat night and the kids are coming to the door, this is a great one to have on, just to kind of come in and out of the film. I think, so I think it's a little higher for me because I know that I'm going to put this on and I can recommend this for people that are maybe wanting to have a fun time, looking for that good mix of horror and comedy, and maybe even those people that want to kind of get their feet wet and to dive deeper into horror. I could say, well, turn on Lisa Frankenstein. That'll kind of give you an idea of what you're going to be getting into a little farther down the line. So, I think this one is definitely going to be something I'm going to recommend to people because it is such a fun time.
And yes, folks, as we stated right at the top here, we did get the Blu-ray sent to us from Universal. I kept the Blu-ray here. Luke got the digital copy. So we had to kind of split it up as far as just our viewership of the special features here. But I will say, just like looking at the packaging and kind of like, us talking about it and everything, it's interesting to me whenever I see a film that says collector's edition, because by today's standards, maybe you could call it that, considering physical media is kind of on the downturn. But it's kind of seems to me like they're jumping onto a trend from like the Scream Factory kind of boutique era of labeling them as collector's edition, especially when it comes to horror films. They really like to do that. But I gotta say, as far as just this more or less being a standard release in my eyes, I think it's really well done for the amount of features you get. And I say that strictly because, number one, there's an audio commentary on here. I didn't get to listen to it yet, but damn do I appreciate that, because those are so few and far between by today's standards. Luke, you got a chance to check out some of the deleted scenes and gag reels. Tell our audience a little bit about your thoughts on those.
Yeah, there's a handful of actual deleted scenes in here. Nothing that I think affects the story too much by, taking them out. I think there are fun little tidbits there. A lot of them are what they probably run about 30 to 40 seconds at most. So they're just kind of little extras there that you can see as they wanted to tighten up the film that is, I think, running about an hour 40, so I can totally see why they ended up having to cut just a handful of those scenes. Really, what caught my eye were these, uh, those extras where they're sitting down with Zelda Williams as well as Diablo Cody, and you're kind of getting to see, pull the curtain back and getting to see how a lot of stuff on set is working. And, honestly, my big takeaway from that is this relationship between Zelda Williams and Diablo Cody, just seeing them sit together, so complimentary of each other, and also seeing, some tidbits from Diablo Cody, as she said, this kind of started out more straight horror, and then as she was writing it, realizing, well, there are some comedy bits in here, and kind of deciding to lean into that. And then, just the openness of Zelda Williams, this being her directorial debut of being, that feature length film, of how open she is to collaboration, and just how much fun it seemed like Catherine Newton, Cole Sprouse were having as they caught them in those little candid, in between shooting and kind of just collabing. Just how camaraderie filled it felt, coming off on screen there. So, I think those scenes are just absolutely necessary, especially as Dylan was talking about, not really, getting a lot in terms of extras for a lot of these films anymore, where it's just kind of the bare bones. It's the film, and that's all you get. So it was really nice to be able to see just how the crew and cast were able to gel.
Yeah, and I say the big three features that I took away from this were resurrecting the 1980s, an electric connection, and a dark comedy duo. These are three featurettes that are on the film. And yeah, I think my favorite, obviously, is a dark comedy duo. Like Luke said, it really dives into just the relationship between Diablo Cody and Zelda Williams and how they kind of got to work together. They really dive into Diablo Cody's inspirations going into Lisa Frankenstein. And I mean, as far as current and most recent releases go, again, this not being a boutique label, I was really impressed with this. I thought that this was definitely the highlight of this package here for me, is that there's just a good majority of bonus content for big fans of Lisa Frankenstein. So I think if you're a huge fan of this film, and I think that if this is something that you're like, we're huge in theaters, you want to see it again, I think this is probably worth owning. If you're a big fan, I would definitely recommend picking this up.
I love the
I
color
think
scheme on the cover too.
absolutely,
I mean, look nice on
yeah.
a shelf.
Yeah, and the fact they give you a slip cover, it's all these nice things us physical media boys love. And yeah, I think for a fun film and everything that we praised about it in our review, the Blu-ray makes up for that too. I think that it's just, again, like Luke said, nice color, slip cover, the special features. It's a complete package. And to be honest, I don't really expect much from these standard releases when it comes to big films like this, which I know is not a massive film, but even these independent ones that get released by major studios or have them distribute, usually you're just getting a trailer, maybe a couple deleted scenes. But no, the fact that they went the extra mile for this, it's really warms my heart just as much as the film did. But yeah, guys, that's going to wrap us up here for Lisa Frankenstein, which is available on Blu-ray this upcoming Tuesday. That is April the 9th. So go out, grab this thing. It's going to be available in all shelves and stores, Amazon, all the places that you usually find your Blu-rays, except for Best Buy and maybe only some Targets. But yeah, definitely go snag this thing if you're anticipating it. We definitely had fun with this. And yeah, thanks again, Universal, for sending this over. This is one that we will definitely probably be keeping in our collection. Like Luke said, revisiting right around the time of Halloween. But other than that, we got a lot of great stuff up on the channel, guys. So definitely keep an eye out for some more videos headed your way, especially a nice fun one that I did for tomorrow. Depending on when you're watching it, it's probably already out. But it involves a little bit of a discussion on the first Omen. So other than that, we got a lot of great stuff. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna smash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna smash your ass.